On the morning of June 7 this year, Mrs. Cheng was home with her 2 children. Her husband had already left for work.
未刷牙，係咁樣喺嗰度自助餐，未刷牙啦，未換衫啊，着嗰啲碌粉啲衫啊，咁樣。我阿仔瞓緊覺，阿女瞓緊覺。
From the kitchen, Mrs. Cheng heard voices at the door.
樓尾你佢成一班人咯，有10幾個人咯，咁多。差人我就冇眼睇嘅，見啲人走嚟翻嚟，佢嗌我合我開門。
She knew immediately who they'd come for. Her 19-year-old daughter, Sai Su, was born in mainland China and only had a temporary permit to stay in Hong Kong. That permit had expired. Immigration officers gave Sai Su just enough time to brush her teeth and pack her bags before they took her away.
我嗰日喊得好辛苦啊，喊到你唔識唞氣咁樣嗌，又血壓高嘅，高升200幾度嘛。佢睇我嗌喊咁咧，佢又冇我個女就驚佢戴手鐐嘛，驚佢啊。佢話阿媽我走咯，佢話我走啊，我第一陣俾佢戴手鐐嘅，我驚啊！因為呢個了解噶嘛，好解啊！聽我話知咗咁多年，夾硬熟啊！佢咁樣一賴我女係咁樣走啊，走。
Sai Su was deported to mainland China later that day. She's just one of approximately 10,000 people Hong Kong doesn't want.
David 咁但係而家你政府喎，把我啲細路捉喎，上門捉喎，係嘛？一捉到嘛咧，好似捆雞翼咁喎，插咗手鐐啊，可唔可以一送上車就走嘅喎？踢爛門喎，扭爛鎖喎，奴隸都唔能夠咁對待啊！
The parents in this room all share Mrs. Cheng's plight. They are Hong Kong residents, but their children are not. The government refuses to give their children the right of abode in Hong Kong and has started sending them back to mainland China, by force if necessary.
你個女先翻落唔翻嚟喎？
死前你都冇嘢，我都喺記者會嗰日嘅記者會講啊。 你拉曬嗰啲仔女，我仲有幾千個家長咪同你練咯，咁鳩出嚟揾啲人練下你，你始終要答覆多渠道解決我啲仔女㗎嘛。
佢嗰班人咧就申請打發錄現在。
Some of the parents here are still fighting through the courts to prevent their children being repatriated, but time is running out. Although this man, Mr. Wong, doesn't realise it yet, he's about to lose his fight.
你去捉啦！
2 weeks later, police and immigration officers have descended upon this housing estate to arrest Mr. Wong's adult daughter. It's after 10 p.m. In a small flat upstairs are Mr. and Mrs. Wong, their daughter, and the men who've come to take her away. The first to emerge is Mrs. Wong. During the arrest of her daughter, she collapsed and lost consciousness. The next to be let out is Mr. Wong. He and his wife are in their 70s and want their daughter to care for them as their health fails.
依家想緊，依家未解決。阿叔，你睇睇醫生先啦，好唔好啊？你太太等緊你啊，喺白車裏面。我同大家講清楚啲，你老婆個生命有問題啊，你明唔明白？你同佢講你老婆先啦。依家啱啱19號上庭未解決啊，所以即係呢度就出人啦。啊！
After the parents are taken away, the daughter, Archie Wong, is led out. Within 24 hours, Archie will be taken to the border and handed over to mainland authorities. As an overstayer, she may face punishment in China. This is the sharp end of Hong Kong's approach to people they regard as illegal immigrants.
It's just really just like any other government. There's a need to control the number of people who can form and become part of this population. In the case of Hong Kong, we are a very small territory. The entire Hong Kong is but 1,100 square kilometres.
Michael Wong is Hong Kong's Deputy Secretary for Security. The Security Bureau is in charge of removing children who don't qualify for right of abode.
If they do not enjoy the right of abode in Hong Kong under our law, that's something that they will have to accept. And the only way for them to come to Hong Kong for settlement purpose will be for them to go back to the mainland, apply to come to Hong Kong under legal channels.
Mrs. Regina Yip is the chief of Security Bureau. She's always making the comparison between what the United States, Canada is doing with the immigrants. But I say, those are immigrants. Our people are not immigrants. They are Chinese. They are children of Hong Kong people.
The unity of the family is central to Chinese culture. Yet for thousands of Hong Kong Chinese, a split family has been the norm for decades. The plight of these families today says much about how this city is faring under Chinese rule, struggling with the promise of one country, two systems. Mrs. Cheng's story is typical of many families seeking right of abode. It explains why they even need to seek that right in the first place. Mr. Cheng is a construction worker who was born and raised in mainland China. This is where he met and married his wife. Just over the border, though, in British-controlled Hong Kong, the economy was booming and there was an insatiable hunger for cheap, unskilled labour. Throughout the 1970s, illegal immigration from the mainland was encouraged. The reward, if they stayed, was eventual Hong Kong residency. Like thousands of others, Mr. Cheng decided to try his luck in Hong Kong. Late one night in 1980, he left his wife and baby son and scaled a border fence. After 7 years, Mr. Cheng was granted Hong Kong residency, but under a policy of the British colonial government, his wife could not automatically join him. Mrs. Cheng had to apply to mainland authorities and wait to be granted a one-way permit. In 1990, 10 years after her husband left, she was finally allowed to come. However, as was the norm, her 2 children were not. So Mrs. Cheng left behind 7-year-old Sai Su and her 11-year-old brother, Kin.
即係叫佢要快啲翻嚟咯，咁樣咯。嗰時我阿爺仲有命啊嘛，咁咧就拉住我哋咯，唔俾我哋即係咩咯，即係黐住我媽唔俾佢走啊嘛。
3 years later, Kin was allowed to join his parents in Hong Kong. Sai-Su, however, never received her one-way permit. As a result, she was raised by her grandparents on the mainland.
而家都鬧我，你而家得阿哥哥咋，帶翻嚟香港就我你唔理，係咁樣抌低，咁樣鬧我，唉，真係陰公啊講佢啊！而家有一排鬧我，好似鬧到幾時？我咪自己襯咯，唔識搞佢咯。係啊，佢鬧到我咧，我咪跟我事啊，公安嗰度啦，公安唔批你。 有冇間嗰時啊？
我批一個啦，佢話
我成日到公安嗰度
兩個冇得俾嘅，咁樣講。
我公安嗰度行得過。
It's not unusual for Chinese authorities to issue a permit to only one child. There appears to be little rhyme or reason to the system of one-way permits. In one celebrated case, a man had to choose between his twin daughters. Rob Brooke is an Australian lawyer who lives in Hong Kong. He's represented 5,000 families in right of abode cases and says the one-way permit system is deeply flawed.
There are even cases where the woman has just given birth and she gets a one-way permit and she must take it up within 2 weeks, otherwise it expires. And this is the only opportunity for her ever to join her husband in Hong Kong. So she might be breastfeeding that baby, but she's obliged to leave that baby in the mainland.
It's also a system, he says, that is notoriously corrupt.
This is a fact which is commonly known throughout Hong Kong, throughout the Hong Kong government, that if you've got the money and you can pay the bribe to the people in the mainland who issue the certificate, and it's they who issue the certificate, the one-way permit is what it's called, then you might be able to get here earlier.
In 1997, the British handed Hong Kong back to China. The promise of one country, two systems was made. While the world held its breath and questioned the future of Hong Kong under Chinese rule, for right of abode seekers, it was a time of celebration. The reason for their joy was a document called the Basic Law. Before handover, the British and Chinese authorities drafted what is effectively a mini-constitution for Hong Kong. The Basic Law laid out who has the right to be a permanent resident. This included, for the very first time, all mainland-born children of Hong Kong parents.
I think there was a great deal of hope before 1997. There was families who had long awaited for the Basic Law to come into effect and who were expecting their children they'd been denied consortium with, parental consortium with, for a decade or more in some cases. They were expecting them to be allowed to join them and that it would be a happy reunion.
On the first working day after handover, thousands of people queued up outside the main immigration office to seek right of abode. Some had recently been smuggled to Hong Kong by organised people smugglers called snakeheads. Others had arrived on visitors' visas and overstayed. The Cheng family also saw 1997 as a time of opportunity and organised for snakeheads to bring Sai-Su to Hong Kong.
即係97年嗰時咧，佢嚟咗兩個聽嗰啲熟人話：你試下啦，阿妹嚟啦，你大陸冇得俾你㗎啦。呢度望佢97年個機會咧，好多人幫佢擺低喺嗰度啊，一個人就鄉下，佢有同情㗎嚟香港咁樣，嗌佢嚟嗰度試下咯。佢個老豆就唔信咯，我哋新啲人講咯。
Mr. Cheng's scepticism was well-founded. Instead of receiving right of abode, hundreds were arrested and deported in a sign of things to come. Just 10 days after handover, the new government rushed through legislation that prevented the families from applying for right of abode in Hong Kong. The government went on to argue that the basic law didn't give all children right of abode, only those who were born after their parents became Hong Kong residents. Thousands of families lined up to fight the government in court. But the new Beijing-appointed chief executive of Hong Kong stood firm. He promised a fair fight.
We are a community very much of rule of law. So these challenges are natural, they're expected. And we will do what the court eventually decide because, you know, we are a place of rule of law.
In January 1999, the highest court in the territory, the Court of Final Appeal, ruled that the government was wrong and the people were right. All children of Hong Kong residents had a right of abode. The families were ecstatic, believing that reunion was finally a legal reality. The government, though, was far from overjoyed.
If follows through, would create unacceptable pressure for Hong Kong in terms of the population pressures it brings, in terms of the pressures on the provision of social services, on infrastructure that it could bring.
In an extraordinary move, the Hong Kong government turned to Beijing. It asked the National People's Congress to reinterpret the Basic Law. This unprecedented request effectively overruled the Hong Kong court and reversed its judgment.
We do not believe that the interpretation given by the Court of Final Appeal back in January 1999 reflected the true legislative intent behind those basic law provisions.
So the court made a mistake, did they?
The court made an interpretation that the government did not agree with.
The families involved were devastated. Hundreds came to protest outside the government offices. The legal fraternity was also shocked.
Do you think that the judicial system in Hong Kong was actually undermined? Was it that serious?
Absolutely. I think it was the most serious thing to have happened in Hong Kong.
Margaret Ng is a barrister and independent member of the Legislative Council. She organised a protest against the reinterpretation, in which 600 members of the legal community took to the streets. They marched in silence and wore black to mourn what they saw as a loss of judicial independence. The government was accused of breaking its commitment to the rule of law.
The rule of law is based on equality before the law and based on the government obeying the law, because the government is very powerful. If it chooses not to obey the law and the law only binds ordinary people, then you don't have the rule of law in Hong Kong.
Even after Beijing's reinterpretation of the Basic Law, legal action continued. The final hope for right of abode seekers and their families was another case in the Court of Final Appeal in January this year. On the day the judgment was due to be handed down, long lines of people gathered outside the court to wait for the verdict. They were to be disappointed. The decision meant that right of abode was now ruled out for the majority of claimants, around 10,000 people. Yen Wang was one of those who lost that day. Like most of the others, she was given until March 31st to leave Hong Kong. Sue didn't leave, and to avoid arrest has gone into hiding. She didn't want the house she's staying in revealed, so we arranged to do this interview in a car.
有時都覺得幾悶㗎，覺得好無聊嘅。但係即係比起即係我自己有種咁感覺，比起喺呢度香港人咧，即係話個坐監，即係覺得仲辛苦。
你因為咧，如果你啲人喺入邊坐監啊，覺得最起碼魔都仲咁撳，唔會話突然間有差佬入嚟，話直頭破門而入有拉你，即係你仲好似有種咁嘅驚恐症咁咯。你反而
Sue is 25 years old. Because she's here illegally, she can't work, study, or even walk the streets freely. Everyone in Hong Kong carries an identity card and can be asked to present it at any time. Even a recent outing with friends was fraught with risk.
嗰一次咧就撞啱好多差人，但係我當時我一見到我都驚，但佢哋咧個個都喺度拖住我手，即係有一個拖住喺度揼住我膊頭嗰陣時，我都即係當時就冇見到阿 Sir 嗰陣時，即係感覺到即係大家行埋一齊都覺得即係好開心，但係見到阿 Sir 嗰陣時，就自己覺得即係好似好即係呆晒咁，都唔知點樣。
出來啊！
Mr. Chow heads the Parents Committee for Right of Abode Seekers. He says there are hundreds of people now in hiding. They and their families go to extraordinary lengths to evade the authorities.
就以一條街、一個屋村或者某個地方組成一個組織嚇，咁佢哋咧就進行放哨啦。 比如早晨就有家長喺樓下或者街外咧就觀察。當佢發覺咧入境事務處嗰班嗰啲車輛或者咧警察嗰啲警察車一到咧，佢哋咧就馬上咧。 向樓上嗰啲居留權嘅家屬咧，通風報信打電話，咁樣通知佢哋逃避走去嚇。咁雖然係咁啫，但係佢哋咧都覺得要爭回自己嘅權利喎，要獲得家庭團聚咧，一定要付出。
Sue is prepared to pay that price because she believes her cause is just. She says her right to live in Hong Kong is enshrined in the basic law, and she doesn't accept the reinterpretation. Sue also believes if she returns to China now, she'll be blacklisted by authorities and prevented from visiting her family for at least 5 years.
最 last 自己去俾佢捉到嗰陣時，翻去嗰陣時，我自己都心甘情願。如果既然間家，就算係因為我知道有好多人冇得續期，都係俾人埋咗嘅，都係冇翻到去大陸嘅，因為佢覺得翻去大陸係死路一條嘅。喺呢度或者真係希望即係有啲奇蹟出現啦。
The Catholic Church has been one of the strongest supporters of the right of abode seekers. The views of Bishop Yen in particular have won him no friends in government.
People have a right to lessen the damage to themselves. Huh? So if they see by staying here or by hiding, they are gaining nothing, and they want to go back and live peacefully, okay, they have all right to do that. Huh? But if somebody wants to keep fighting, they have a right to do so. They are conscious that they are not gaining anything, but still it's an honorable thing, and we support them because they are fighting for their right. I think it is something a secret to fight for one's right, even when know that he is losing the case. Okay, we are losing with them, huh? But we fight. We still fight.
Apart from the church, right of abode seekers do not have many supporters in Hong Kong. Albert Cheng is the host of a popular morning radio show called Teacup in a Storm. While he personally thinks an injustice has been done to the right of abode seekers, the vast majority of his callers disagree.
咁你可以，你香港人可以隨時翻上去噶嘛？咁點樣做嘢？點樣揾食咧？政府又唔係，我想問你點樣做嘢？點樣揾食咧？翻上去。我想問你點樣揾食咧？
嗱，譬如我啦，或者林伯啦嚇，即係我佢屋企喺內蒙嘅，咁你叫佢點樣揾食咧？點樣翻上去一家團聚？
咁你自己上去咯，
咪抵你死咯，係嘛？
而家唔係香港政府唔係俾你上去。
係唔係喎？咁你而家唔俾我都。Once they think they're not obeying the law. Number two is they think these people come to Hong Kong will become a burden to the society, and they will drain the resources from housing, medical, school, everything. You know, and basically they just think they're coming here to steal their jobs.
The glory days when Hong Kong was one of Asia's most prosperous and confident cities are gone. Since 1997, the economy has been in rapid decline. Unemployment, once virtually non-existent, is pushing 8%. Suicide has emerged as a major social issue. A climate of fear and insecurity prevails, a climate the government is accused of exploiting. It produced a survey saying that if right of abode were given, 1.67 million people would come to Hong Kong within 10 years, costing billions.
One of the funny things was that some people did analysis of this, and basically the government had everybody in education, on welfare, in public housing and in prison all at the same time to come up with the sorts of figures which they came up with, even if there were 1.6 million people who were eligible, which figures themselves were highly controversial. But if you want to sway public opinion in Hong Kong, a very effective way of doing that is to talk about the hip pocket and to say that this will sink Hong Kong, and they actually use those words, this will sink Hong Kong.
I think that our government in that sense, we have complimented them. They have done a great job in dividing the people, in promoting the hatred among the people in Hong Kong to the new immigrant or the right of abode seekers in Hong Kong.
You think the government has...
They've done a great job, but it's dirty.
I would not say that. I don't see it that way. The fact remains that if we look at, again, if you look at the facts, I think that would be the best approach forward. If you look at the facts, then it is true that in terms of the knowledge level, that if you compare an average mainland migrant with an average Hong Kong people, you do see some discrepancy.
Sha Tin is a working-class suburb in an area called the New Territories, a world away from the neon-lit streets of central Hong Kong. This electrical appliances shop is owned by Mr. Ho. He's come a long way from the penniless young man who swam to Hong Kong from China in 1978. The actions of the government have not dampened his desire to have his family together.
就我付出咗喺香港成20幾30年，到今日點解喺人權各方面嘅嘢，我係唔可以一家團聚？咁但係呢個問題其實我咧問過入境處，但係佢都冇一個圓滿嘅答覆俾我。
Mr. Ho's wife and 2 children came to Hong Kong illegally 2.5 years ago. Mr. Ho paid snakeheads to smuggle them in by boat late one night.
我又要叫住個仔，又要叫住個女，嗰個心情已經係俾人趕，嗰個心情已經係好傷啦，好傷心啦，已經俾人趕，到處俾人趕，仲要去逃去邊度呢？嗰種心情。大海茫茫望住一望無際嘅大海，波濤洶湧咁樣，嗰啲浪聲狗聲，嗰種心情嗰種交集，真係一輩子都好難忘記。從來都未經歷過呢啲咁。
Mrs. Ho and her children don't qualify for right of abode. When they arrived, they were given temporary permits to stay. After the final court ruling this year, the Immigration Department stopped extending the temporary permits of most right of abode seekers. The Hos still have theirs, but now they only cover a 7-day period. Every week they must report to the immigration office in the city to see if they can stay another 7 days. They live in a state of limbo.
每次去都係個心情都係嗰個腳步都好沉重嗰個心情同我腳步一樣係咁沉重。
It's been hard for Mrs. Ho and her children since they came to Hong Kong. When they arrived, they were told the children couldn't go to school. The government says this would encourage illegal immigration.
冇書讀，即係對我啲細路仔由細到大個理想，等於係中途毀滅咗佢個童夢啊，自己嘅夢想。佢細細個咁喜愛讀書，亦都係得獎無數嚇。
For the first year here, they had no education at all. They now go to school courtesy of 2 sympathetic principals who are prepared to defy the government to let them attend. However, they are only sit-ins, meaning there'll be no official record of their study.
Even if you agree with the government on the right of abode issue, still it is unintelligible why those people who are here, even temporarily, with permission to stay here temporarily, should be deprived of schooling. You know, there are people and their right of abode is not clear. So they have a case in the court. But they have to stay here 1 year, 2, 3, 4. Why these children should not go to school?
After more than an hour of travelling, they arrive at the immigration office. Every day now, people like the Hos are making this same trip, only to find their permits are not renewed.
即係而家我哋喺一個十字路口入邊，又幾時又要俾人清走，嗰度又俾人講，嗰種心情係都幾難受。
They emerge only slightly relieved. They've had their permits extended for another week.
咁日子亦都好快飛咁快，一個星期好快又過去，亦都係另外一個負擔又嚟嘅，又下個星期又係要咁行。 Police are moving to end the protests that have been a hallmark of the last 5 years. Now the court cases are finished, the government is concentrating on removing all those who no longer qualify for right of abode. While some people are still resisting, the Security Bureau says more and more are volunteering to leave.
I think as and when they appreciate the determination with which the government is handling the issue, as and when they come to accept legal reality, I think most of them would then come to the conclusion that really going back to the mainland is in their own best interest. Then more and more people will go. As this is something we are witnessing right at this moment as we speak.
Many right of abode seekers have been worn down by the struggle. At this recent protest outside Immigration Tower, a group of right of abode seekers is staging a last stand. 8 people who've been living illegally in Hong Kong are showing their faces in an act of defiance. They announce their presence to an immigration official who's come down from the building.
嗱，今日我哋有8個人喺度係過咗期嘅。 我哋都唔怕俾你知道，咁你哋要採取下一步咩嘢行動嘅話，由得你哋。但係我哋希望呢可以同你哋嘅處長級可以去個見面，大家去傾翻隻居留權問題。我再去請示一下你嘅開出嘅條件嚇。咁要快啲啊，唔該。
These people are desperate. The government tells failed right of abode seekers to go back to the mainland and join the queue for a one-way permit. But the reality is that most are not even eligible to join that very long and deeply flawed queue. These protesters want to discuss their situation with the Immigration Commissioner. It soon becomes clear what the officials' priority is.
今日如果有爭取居權人士係想今日接受自願遣返嘅，亦都請佢行出嚟，我哋會帶佢入我哋嘅辦事處嗰度辦理有關手續。我要講嘅我哋咧就唔係自願遣返嘅，係俾你哋係你哋政府逼我哋嘅，你哋想點樣你哋就做啦嚇。我哋唔係自願遣返，全部你哋嚇。
A large police presence quickly builds up. While public demonstrations are allowed in Hong Kong, authorities like them to be controlled. Past experience has also made them nervous. 2 years ago, a protest by a small group of right of abode seekers at this same building turned to tragedy. One of the protesters doused himself in fuel in a suicide attempt. The fire spread, and as well as the protester dying, an immigration officer was also killed. Many others survived horrific injuries. Despite the defiance, some people here today have already made the decision to go back.
即係堅持咗2年幾啦，已經嘥晒好多時間啦、青春啦，咩都冇啦。仲喺大陸嗰邊咧，咩都冇啦，事業乜都冇晒啦。你唔翻嚟都唔得啊！喺呢度又唔出到街，做唔到嘢啊！係啊，即係我阿爸我阿媽年紀都好大，我驚即係你哋嗰邊即係入境處如果入波拉你咧話，我阿媽就有心臟病咯。
The whole group eventually agrees to give themselves up. Family and friends are farewelled. The group begin the walk into Immigration Tower, where they'll be processed for repatriation. Around the back of the Immigration Tower, family and friends wait to catch one more glimpse of them on the bus that is taking them back to China.
We would appreciate the difficulties that some families may face, but if you're talking about huge sadness, then we do believe that many of those stories are exaggerated. But the fact remains that traveling between Hong Kong and the mainland have become much easier now, and frequent visits are now possible and will become easier as time goes by.
It's a little over 2 months since that morning when the Cheng's daughter Sai Su was taken by immigration. Travelling to mainland China is the only option left if they want to see her. But it's not an easy option. Mrs. Cheng will be making the trip tomorrow without her husband.
我請唔到假啦，即係同埋個判頭講㗎啦，佢幾日唔得咯，你來回都要2日㗎啦，佢話唔得。 即係等陣你唔得夾硬想去，又驚佢俾佢炒魷魚咁。我梗係想翻去睇個女㗎啦，即係佢唔俾錢嫁冇得講㗎。
Mrs. Cheng's daughter is living in a small village in southern China. It's normally a 6-hour bus ride from Hong Kong. Today we're going by car. While she's looking forward to seeing Sai Su, Mrs. Cheng is worried about her daughter's health.
冇病過冇壞過啊！即係翻佢鄉下嗰次咧，佢壞咗啊！即係發燒咯，發燒發緊都病咗咯。
Sai Su is living with her elderly grandmother, who raised her in the village while her family were in Hong Kong. This will only be the second time Mrs. Cheng has seen Sai Su since she was deported.
Cái gì tao cả mới con là sầu luôn, nhưng mà con là cái nhớ ra hạt thì thịt nó mà hay à? Lâu chơi ở này khác, khi lâu hạt mua hạt đó, khi lời nó khác cái thứ nào mà nó mua ta thấy gì mua hạt đó, nhưng mà cô có buồn chi ngàn nuôi lâu lâu, khi thở là dắt nhưng mà cô buồn, khác là kéo bá kéo cố rồi ngàn nuôi lâu lâu nó mua hạt đó. 而家冇種啊，點佢冇錢買錢？餐之可，佢可唔如可，都無依無靠，喺7、80年啲，我覺得可以幹咋。佢嗰一點係換啲眼淚流卡嘅行啊！你我冇一個。 嗰陣點到幫扶在架空咋，我係由到日本人來照顧咯，眼有嗎？那你問啊？一個人冇到對眼，做咩？人有冇人打？邊有冇看啫？你嚇憎佢都問罪，嚇憎佢都捱。眼有嗎？嗰啲要假有早要假正常嘅冇蝦我打，我頭有歪分，我都嚟執拋啦。有發現有冇行打爆咯，有冇打係實。 三樣分就齊飛啊！你話留佢坐又咩用啊？留坐正濕，喂我算嚟㗎，唔係假喎。
Sai Su spent most of her life growing up in this house, away from her parents and brother. When she finally joined them in Hong Kong 4 years ago, she hoped it would be for good. Now she's finding it difficult to readjust to life in the village.
呢度啲生活好，去買菜又遠，好雜，同埋好多壞人啊！治安唔好，唔穩，好唔好？好亂啊！去一次買菜又要行路。
Sai Su says she desperately wants to be with her parents and brother.
辛苦，未試過咁辛苦啊！我真係好想唔好離開佢哋啊！
而家出去食少少啦，好快嘅咋，好土味嘅。
係絕對會冇前途嘅啫。落喺呢啲地方，邊有前途？一啲前途都冇㗎呢度。又唔知去邊度揾嘢做。我唔想留喺度，我真係好想返香港同屋企人一齊生活。
Meanwhile, back in Hong Kong, disquiet still exists in some circles about the events of the last 5 years. There's a view that this whole saga was only partly to do with the right of abode seekers themselves. At its heart was a power struggle between the Hong Kong judiciary and Beijing. The judgment handed down by the Court of Final Appeal back in January 1999 did more than just grant right of abode to the families. In its wording, it essentially asserted the independence of Hong Kong's judiciary from Beijing. This had never been done before.
This was considered a kind of insubordination, and therefore these unruly people must be brought to their knees in submission.
Margaret Ng believes the pressure to seek reinterpretation of that judgment actually came from Beijing.
So if we go to the question of what this has got to do with Beijing, it has started with Beijing, it was insisted on Beijing, by Beijing, and it was ultimately given by Beijing. So I will take some convincing to believe that this is entirely a matter for us.
This all throws into doubt the claim of Hong Kong and China existing as one country, two systems.
The question is how long these two systems will last, and how well can we run a separate system if at the top, that is at the chief executive, they will always be mindful, looking over their shoulders as to whether something would offend Beijing.
Having exhausted all legal avenues, there's little hope left for the families involved. Mr. Wong has not seen his daughter since she was snatched in a late-night raid. Since that night, his health has deteriorated. He's now in hospital. Sue is still leading her life of subterfuge, changing houses frequently and avoiding authorities. When recently reporting to the immigration centre, Mrs. Ho and her children were informed their time was up. They've been told to prepare for deportation. During her stay in China, Mrs. Cheng was told by security officials that her daughter has now been blacklisted. Sai Su will not get any kind of permit to visit Hong Kong for at least 2 years.
Now they talk about the prosperity of Hong Kong, etc. But those people, I mean, the parents of these children, they are the people who made the prosperity of Hong Kong. I don't think the prosperity of this city is built only on the capitals of the few rich people. I think the prosperity came from the hard work of the people in general. And so why should they not have their children come here? I think it's very unfair.